Welcome to week 111, count it, week 111 of Shark Sports Radio. Ticket has the night off. I'm riding solo. It's yours truly, Mark Loisel Jr., a.k.a. Shark, right here in the Ocean State. Thank you all for taking a dive in the tank with us tonight. As always, you can tune in using your Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, and or Spotify app. Check us out on X at SSR34_, YouTube at the Shark Sports Radio channel, TikTok at Shark Sports Radio, and on the Shark Sports Radio Facebook page. Play Underdog today. Use the promo code Shark Sports when signing up as a new user. You have the opportunity to win $1,000 of bonus cash. And if you love the app and if you love the NBA, it's the perfect mix. Underdog is currently offering a Luka Doncic discount for every Lakers game for the rest of the season. Tonight, we bring back page turners. Yeah, we took a little hiatus from this, but we got great feedback from the listeners, and we got to give them what they want. So we are giving them what they want tonight. We had the pleasure of speaking with columnist from Athlon and former writer of Sporting News, Sean Deveney. Sean has published books like Fun City, Facing Michael Jordan, Remembering Kobe Bryant, The History of the NBA in 12 Games, and most recently published Steph Curry, Lessons from a Legend. You can buy all those books and more at Barnes & Noble, Target, and other bookstore outlets. Sean, what's going on? So, Sean, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making the time. We're going to get into, obviously Curry's impact in the NBA history, the existing state of the NBA, and what you got in stored at Athlon. So right off the jump here, you wrote books about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. So I guess what made you want to continue the NBA train with Steph Curry?
Well, I've written books on a few subjects. I've done a lot of sort of old history baseball books as well, which I enjoy doing. Those are sort of, you go into the library and you're digging up all this old stuff and you're looking in archives and all that. But much of my career I spent covering the NBA, so that's sort of, on one hand it's sort of interviewing ghosts, interviewing, looking for these old articles and looking for quotes from players from 150 years ago. But the NBA is sort of my right now, and that's these are the guys that I've myself in my own career have grown up covering and have sort of grown up with them. So it's interesting to be able to write about them as people who are right here and able to chat with them and chat with the players who played against them and get a real sense of what their impact on the game was and certainly beyond the court as well.
Yeah, and speaking of Steph Curry, right? Obviously, right now in the NBA, he is a idol for a lot of younger kids. And growing up in the 90s, we always had, players that we always looked up to. And it seems like Steph Curry, LeBron James, obviously in that mix, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander maybe on the fly, Tatum, as we all know. But with Steph Curry, right, it seems like he was so set up to be successful. When you look at it, outside of the special talent he had at Davidson that obviously translated to the league, it seems like his dad, who's the former NBA player, played for the Charlotte Hornets, Steph Curry, it seems like, he added some type of maturity, responsibility, those elements to becoming an NBA player. How important was his dad in that translation from the college to the NBA?
Yeah, his dad was one of the best three-point shooters of his day, back in the 90s when the three-point shot wasn't nearly, obviously, as prolific as it was as it is today. But, Del Curry, and he held all of his kids to a certain standard. And, when Steph was young, I believe he was in 8th grade, he decided that he really did want to be a basketball player. Like, that's what I want to do. And Del Curry said, okay, if that's what you want to do, then I'm going to show you the right way to do it. If you want to do it the right way, this is going to be how we're going to do it. And Steph at the time was about 110 pounds, and he had to. He'll describe it to you. He had to do a slingshot. He had to get the ball in the basket. He had to almost sling it up there. And Del Curry said, that's not going to work. You can't. If you're serious about this, is what we're going to do. So he spent the summer in North Carolina, where they lived. A lot of time at his grandparents' house. Rebuilding his shot, where Del Curry just completely broke his shot down and said, listen, for the next month, you're not shooting anything beyond a 4-footer, but you're going to shoot it the correct way. You're going to hold it over your head and get the release right. And he went through and he had to do from 4 feet and then from 6 feet and then from 8 feet and kind of taught him that way and really had to rebuild. And Steph was very, very frustrated. Steph did not like doing all this, but Del Curry said, look, this is what you want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And it's funny that Del Curry's sister, so Steph Curry's aunt, referred to that as the summer of tears because Steph Curry would be out there practicing, but he'd be crying the whole time. But he wanted it, and he kept going out there. And his dad told him, anytime if you want to stop, you stop, you quit. But if you want to learn to do this the right way, this is how to do it.
Yeah, no, and I love it. It's like the summer days, right? I grew up in the cul-de-sac. You're going outside shooting hoops, but it's another thing to have like a former NBA player be your dad, right? And focus on like what got him there and how it can translate into the NBA. So it's a fascinating story, it really is. And speaking of the Warriors, right? So obviously, they've won championships. 2 of their NBA championship teams are in the top 10 in defensive ratings of all time. 2016-2017 team being at number 1. So I know his mom in the book emphasized that in the beginning of his story that in high school he had to focus on defense. So I guess how imperative was it, looking back on it now, for the Warriors to really build a defense to last around a prolific scorer like Steph Curry, who does have a 108.5 career defensive rating, which probably stuns a lot of people, but he does have that.
Yeah, he's not known as a great defender, and he'll be the first to tell you that he's not a great defender, but he doesn't hurt the team.
Yes.
You can't go at him the way you can go at a Damian Lillard or some of the other guys who are smaller guards in the league. He's a smart guy, and he knows how to sort of hide his deficiencies. And you're right. His mother. There's a famous story at a tournament, an AAU tournament, and he had a whole bunch of points, and his mom said, "Yeah, that was great, but you got burned on defense." So his mom was a good athlete too. She was a volleyball player at Virginia Tech.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So. Wow. He had a certain standard, and you're right. That's something that gets lost about those Warriors teams. Andrew Bogut, their big man, when they made the trade that sent away Monte Ellis for Andrew Bogut, it was a very unpopular trade. People who were around at the time will remember that the owner of the team, the new owner of the team, the guy who owns it now, Joe LaCobe, went to half court at one point for a presentation, and they booed him because he sent away Monte Ellis, a very popular player, for this big guy, Andrew Bogut, who was hurt at the time. But Bogut became, really the centerpiece of that defense. And like I say, Steph knew how to use Bogut to where he could gamble on certain things defensively because he knew Bogut was back there. Of course, you get Draymond Green as well. Steph, he'll be the first to tell you that he's not Gary Payton out there. But he is somebody who, knows how to play the angles and knows how to use the other guys around him to where you can't really take advantage of him defensively the way a lot of smaller guards, a lot of other teams will do to smaller guards.
Yeah, he's not the glove, that's for sure, but he is a good defender, absolutely. So speaking of Curry and his accolades, right? He's a 4-time first-team NBA, All-NBA. 11-time All-Star. He has a record of 4-2 in the NBA Finals. He broke Ray Allen's record for the most three-pointers made in a regular season. Shoots 42% from three for his career. There is nothing that this guy can't do. When we look at the era of basketball, is he currently the definition of legendary for this time?
Yeah, you have to look because you got to put him into the context. I think there's a couple of things, a couple of ways to look at him. First of all, just as a superstar player who brought in the number of fans that he did. I mean, LeBron comes in 2003, and of course he brings in a whole horde of fans who either love him or hate him. And then Curry comes, 6 years later, and he wasn't a star right away. It took a couple years for Steph Curry to get there. The Warriors were terrible in his early career, and he took a little while to sort of establish what he could do and how well he could do it. But by the time he did around 2011. He brought in just a different level of fans, because I think a lot of people look at LeBron and you can be, stunned by this guy's physical gifts and just how good he is and the amount of work he puts in and what he does for his body. But if I'm a kid and I'm looking at LeBron, I'm not thinking that could be me someday. But I look at Steph Curry and I think that could be me someday.
I got a chance.
Yeah, he's skinny, 6'3". I mean, he looks like any kid walking off the street. Whereas LeBron, when LeBron was 18, he looked like an NFL linebacker. So it was a different sort of level when Steph came in, just in terms of the fandom. And then you get on to on the floor. Now the game was ready to change when Steph come, but he put it into overdrive. So if you go back in 2009, his rookie year, the average NBA team that year shot 18 3-pointers per game. Across the league. And you look at the year that they won the championship, the first time, 2015, the average was 22. So it had gone up, but only went up by 4. You look at it now, here we are 10 years after that, and it's up at 38 per game. So
it exploded.
It went from 18 to 30. So it more than doubled in the time that Steph Curry. And he's not the only reason for that, obviously, but he's a big part of the reason.
Yeah, and it's a great segue. So I want to talk about this too, because I grew up in the 90s, right? And that era was kind of all about defense. The 70s, the 80s was all about defense, and like in any era, right? It kind of makes a change for the better or for the worse, depending on how you look at it, right? Especially in the NBA. But when I looked up the single best season for defensive rating for any NBA team in history, according to StatMuse, the latest year that I saw in the top 25 was the 2003-2004 Indiana Pacers at number 3. So I ask you this. We're seeing it now. Offensive rating is through the roof. It's on another level here in the 2020s. So I ask you, which era do you prefer?
I mean, that's a good question, because what happens with any era or any style of play is that other teams pile in and it gets pushed to such an extreme that you have to say, well, this is getting unwatchable, right? So I was covering the league in 2003, 2004, and it was ugly. I mean, those were some ugly games. Those I remember I was at I think it was 2004 when the Pacers played the Pistons, the Eastern Conference Finals, and it was like 78-76 were the typical, that was the final score. That was it.
Yeah.
That's halftime now, so what we saw in the 90s with the physicalness and a lot of the defense and slowing down the pace and the way coaches would approach things, that by the time you get to 2003, 2004, it had gone too far and it was just ugly, and some of those finals, the Spurs against the Nets, they were just ugly. And so it had gone too far. And I think we're doing that now sort of on the opposite end, where you start to make a change and then, 2010 to 2015, it's beautiful. You've got a good mix of defense, teams are doing different things. And now we're in a case where everybody's doing the same thing, and it's all jacking up 3-pointers, and it's you got no mid-range game, you got no defense, and it's gone too far. So, if I had to pick, I'd probably pick the 90s just because, I thought some of those rivalries were just off the charts, and you don't see that as much now. But I think in both cases, we got to a point where it went too far. I think that's where we are right now with the NBA.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The sweet spot was in the 2010s. Like, you had a mix of both, right? So I think that's a great point, because, you have the 90s, and then, now I prefer the 90s basketball because I like the physicality, the get in your face type of, opponent, right? Because you don't see it enough these days. It seems like it's a little bit more softer. Guys know each other. They're very cool and casual about it. But I feel like it's slowly taking that turn. We'll see if that happens. But with all these bigs like Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama and Jokic, I hope the identity shifts a little bit more defensively. But I definitely appreciate today's basketball. But there's one thing I don't appreciate is the Dallas Mavericks. The Luka Doncic trade went down at midnight on February 2nd. What were your thoughts seeing that news and how it went down, and why would Dallas do such a move?
I like a lot of people, it kind of comes across and you say, well, this is a joke or somebody got duped here. Because it just didn't seem real. And even still, when I think about it and I've heard all the explanation and talking to people around the league and such, it still doesn't seem like it's possible that Dallas looked at Luka Doncic and said, this guy's never going to get in shape, and so we're going to get rid of him. And they've pretty much said that's been the only coherent reason that they've given for why this happened is that they didn't think he fit their culture, and that they were worried about him taking a vacation during the year, as the owner put it, when he had sort of a disastrous interview at a couple of days afterwards. It still doesn't seem real that actually happened. If this guy is not in shape at age 24, 25, and he still got you to the NBA Finals, then, all right, get him into better shape if that's what you need to do. But you just got to the NBA Finals.
You just got there.
You were right there. So, it still defies logic to me. And if the question is, okay, he gets hurt a lot, and we're worried about that, then why'd you trade him for Anthony Davis? Because take a look at his career,
Looks pretty good.
He kind of, he's out right now, of course, but that's been the story of his career. He doesn't play much either. So, it still defies logic at this point, even after hearing all the explanations that we've heard.
But what's funny, Sean? We talked about this in previous podcasts too on Shark Sports Radio here, and I feel like, Nico Harrison, former agent with, the Nike crew. And then obviously he became, friendly with Rob Pelinka, who was also Kobe Bryant's agent. And then you have Anthony Davis, who's represented by Harrison. You have Kobe Bryant, who's represented by Pelinka, who's now the GM of the Lakers. Just saying, I don't know if really Nico Harrison went out and figured out the best trade package, as Mark Cuban has said on multiple podcasts, that he should have went out and did more shopping. Because, why not try to get 3 or 4 draft picks out of them versus just one? So I think the NBA world is just kind of spinning in regards to what the heck actually happened behind closed doors. And is it true that he actually went to other teams and asked for that? Do you have any insight, in regards to that?
I mean, he didn't go to other teams. He did sort of hone in on Anthony Davis as the guy that he wanted. And the problem with where the Lakers were, the Lakers probably would have given him another pick, but they really weren't in a position to ask for it. And the Lakers wanted to keep another. The Lakers only had 2 picks available, and wanted to keep another one to try to make a trade afterwards, which they did. The trade that got rescinded with the Hornets for Mark Williams. So he did not do due diligence there. Look, if Rudy Gobert gets you 5 draft picks, first rounders, if Mikal Bridges gets you 5 first rounders, how does Luka Doncic get you 1? As good as Anthony Davis is, he's 32. Like I say, he doesn't stay on the floor. It just didn't make a lot of sense the way it all went down. And I think if you're a Mavericks fan, then what you were alluding to earlier, the fact that Nico Harrison has this relationship with Rob Pelinka and with Anthony Davis, and that it seems to have been done sort of under the cover of darkness, then it's like, well, that's great, but this is the team that I root for. This is I bought all these Luka Doncic jerseys. I bought season tickets. It really that they could not have bungled this anymore if you're the Dallas Mavericks.
And icing on the cake, right, was Dirk Nowitzki sitting courtside for Luka Doncic's debut.
That sent a huge message. You're right.
Huge message. So we're in March, right? And in the spirit of March Madness, the Cinderella team's a part of the tournament. So, what team is the Cinderella team for the NBA playoffs?
Oh, in the NBA this year?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good question. I think the team that, if you ask like scouts and stuff, certainly in the East, that no one wants to play is Detroit. They've sort of come out of nowhere, as miserable as they've been over the last few years. They make the coaching change. They bring in JB Bickerstaff, and he's got them really humming. And they play very physical. They've got a lot of good young talent. It's a team that's kind of coming. It's one of those teams that sort of plays with the attitude of, they don't know that they're not supposed to be good. So,
Yep.
and the fact that they're very physical, I think, is what scares other teams. We're talking about the style of play being what it is in the NBA. Detroit is a little different. They definitely play much more physical. So I'd have to say that they'd be the team no one really wants to face in the East. Out West, it's probably Houston. For similar reasons, just a young team that also plays it takes on the identity of Ime Udoka, their coach, and so that's probably your best Cinderella in the West.
Yeah, and funny enough, we have the segment called From Downtown, and one of my hot takes, was Houston making it to the Western Conference Finals. So I definitely agree when it comes to Houston. And Detroit was sneaky this offseason going and getting Bickerstaff, because Bickerstaff, when he got fired from Cleveland, Detroit just jumped right on it. So, I totally agree with those two teams. Absolutely. So you're a New Englander, as am I. I grew up a Celtics fan, supporter. When you look at this Celtics team, right, winning banner 18 last year, having all these expectations going into this season, trying to win back-to-back, what will be the reason for them raising banner 19?
Probably the depth. They're in a position now where, Porzingis, for example, he's been in and out. He's played 32 games.
Yeah.
He's missed about half the games this year. He's got this mystery illness, and it was sort of the same thing last year. He didn't play all that much last year, so when he did play in the playoffs, it was sort of like a luxury item, and they've got that same scenario with him now, where if he plays, they're that much better. I don't think they need him to win, though, and because they have so much depth. They have, the 1-2 punch with Tatum and Brown. They have these wild card scorers as well, like Derek White, of course. We've seen Pritchard have, arguably a 6th man of the year type season, and Drew Holiday can step up when it's required. Al Horford, Sam Hauser. We've seen these terrific performances from all over the roster. So, you're going to get what you're going to get from Tatum and Brown, and then you've got so many other guys who can give you something else. And I just think that in a matchup over 7 games, even if it's Cleveland, if it's Oklahoma City, if it's Denver, whoever it is that they play in the playoffs, I just think the Celtics have too much and can overwhelm you in a 7-game series. And that was the case, obviously, last year. Probably less so now. I think they'll have a little tougher road in the playoffs. But I still think in the end, they're just going to be able to overwhelm whoever they play.
And really quickly, what is it about Cleveland this year? What is it?
Well, they made a coaching change too. So, Kenny Atkinson, I think, came in and he's done a really good job. They've also been healthy. That was, you look back last year, Donovan Mitchell missed about 25 games. Darius Garland missed about 25 games. It's tough to put together, and they still won 48. It's tough to put together a really good season when you don't get everybody on the floor at the same time. But at the same time, look, they won 15 games to start the year. They had a 12-game winning streak, and now they're on a 15-game winning streak. It takes a really good team to be able to do that. Part of it is health. Ty Jerome is a guy who doesn't get talked about enough. The impact that he's had, kind of going from a fringe NBA player, a G League guy, to really just, he could make an argument for 6th man of the year as well. They also made the trade for DeAndre Hunter. I think that's, for everything that happened at the trade deadline, that's probably the move that gets the most overlooked.
Yeah.
Because that was what they needed. great defender. He's shooting 50% from the 3-point line since they got him. So
Crazy.
He's doing exactly what they need for them. So I mean, they even when you look at as good as some of the teams in the West are, Cleveland might be the biggest challenge for the Celtics just because of their depth as well.
Yeah, versatility, flexibility. I totally agree with this. Now, we always like to ask the author, the writer, when they come on, what they're currently working on. So if there's anything that you could possibly share, to the listeners, what you have in store.
Right now, just covering NBA and getting through these playoffs. I had a couple other book things that I was sort of looking at, but taking a little break from that. It's a lot of work to do.
A lot.
Let's take a lot of work, Mark. Just trying to focus on getting through the season, and maybe in the off season, we'll see if anything else is out there in terms of new book projects.
Well, we'd love to have you come back on and talk NBA playoffs because that's what we do here on the Shark Sports Radio. We love NBA talk. So, really quickly, the Celtics are playing the Thunder tonight in the TD Garden. Who wins that game?
I think the Celtics. I think that they've looked at this week as a pretty big week for them. Going back to the Lakers game, they really wanted that Lakers game, and they got it, of course. And I think they're looking at this Thunder game. They sort of laid back, for much of the year, which is what a championship team often does.
Right.
But I think that they know this time of year they've got to kick it into gear, and this is one of those games where they really want to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. Shockingly. No, just playing. I really think that the finals, it could be the finals matchup, but the Thunder have a lot of maturation process. They need to mature more heading into the playoffs. So hopefully they take that step. They are, a very good team out west. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, they got J-Dubs there too. So I'm really excited for the NBA playoffs. Really happy that you joined us tonight to talk up shop NBA. Your latest book with Steph Curry, the life lessons of a legend. So, Sean, we really appreciate the time.
Thanks, Mark.